This lesson is what is and how to do shadow work and the dark night of the soul. Healing and raising your vibes with shadow work or the dark night of the soul, or dark night of the soul, however you want to spell it. The night part would be either K-N-I-G-H-T or N-I-G-H-T, which you'll see the difference in the writing section of this lesson. I have it written and I have the video. This is the video. So, as the picture says, while the dark night of the soul is a process of death, the spiritual awakening process is the rebirth. And then shadow work. Shadow work is the dark parts of us that come out to the surface when wounded or hurt by a trigger sometimes, which then the darker part of our defense mechanism appear when we act on it, such as vengeance, revenge, jealousy, envy, etc., and much more than this. Another way to know when it's a shadow is, what is the emotion? Is it something people have made to feel ashamed of? Embarrassed to express a dark-like emotion? We have learned and been taught to suppress our dark emotions and to become cheery and light only. But as you can tell, the world has been waking up and is not so light and cheery as it once was, which can be good or bad, even neutral. It just depends. When we go in tapping into for ourselves, or when guided, the emotion energy surfaces to work on shifting the energies in the vision or memory energy emotion with one of your clairsenses, using the emotions when working on your shadow work, by feeling light in the dark visions or memory of the painful emotions. Feeling in the light means healing and working on ascending the energies of the shadow self, while working on the vision or memory, etc., of the shadow. So the next time the shadow appears again for another scenario, sometimes it can get easier, or if re-triggered, can mean there is still some hidden shadow to feel the light in. In time, it does get lighter and easier to handle if you choose to do the work and find ways to become more ascended. But also, please be mindful to not overdo and unbalance the work, which then can attract the opposite of what we just worked so hard for, which is called the law of attraction. The reason I keep saying emotion, energy, or vice versa is because it is stored in energy form and is energy healing work, but in a practical way to release the energies and to feel light in the energies by cleansing, transmuting, and purifying the energies without having to go in depth of energy healing techniques. That in a way it is being done for us. But to add extra layers, you can do energy healing, which will amplify and heal at a greater level of ascension. Underneath these sections for shadow work and the dark night of the soul will be how to do the work. The dark night of the soul. What is it? One of the ways to know is when we are being guided. Does it feel like lingering utter hopelessness? Or faith can be shaken? Which is working towards ascension? This is the dark scenario that needs light filled in. But this can last a long time, like weeks worth, or months, can even be longer, like years. Depends on how much work we put into it and other factors. This is also one way to know the difference between a quick shadow work or a lingering, longer work, emotions such as the dark night of the soul. Written underneath, I did copy and paste some of that from a wiki. To read all of it, if you desire, that is a clickable link, or you can highlight the link and copy and paste it into your web browser. Some links are clickable and some are to highlight. It just depends. And on the written version, you would be able to have a clickable link, or like I said, unless you have to highlight it and all that. The below written are these two paragraphs. From above website clickable link is where it came from, the wiki. The dark night of the soul is a stage of final and complete purification and is marked by confusion, helplessness, stagnation of the will, and a sense of the withdrawal of the universe or your creator or God's presence. It is the period of final unselfing and the surrender to the hidden purpose of the divine will. The final stage is union with the object of love, the one reality, God. Here the self has been permanently established on a transcendental level and liberated for a new purpose. This is a form of ascension because we are digging into the depths of our soul and are working out human being encounters or situations, etc., to enlighten the dark night of the soul path to a more spiritually enlightened soul path, pertaining to what might have been a learning lesson that sort of hindered until it was picked up on and worked on. And then I put it big bold letters. Big time awareness before doing any of this work, regardless if your guides are guiding you to. The reason I put that in caps is because it is sort of a disclaimer and awareness to be aware of before even doing this type of work. I would highly suggest finishing this course before coming back here to do the work. Your false high vibe guide, which is a fallen archangel known as the devil entities, will be here to feed off of the energy you're shedding from this. But you don't need it to interfere mentally, which it will, and will influence others around you to add more fuel to the fire. This is why people get out of spirituality and either turn back to Christianity or towards it, because they were not taught how to properly remove these obstacles off of our soul path and all the other steps to be successful with this. This course is teaching that. When you start before cleansing your soul path, you will unfortunately find out the hard way, like I did and many others, and will want to run and hide. But it won't stop. It will keep enhancing, and it will keep getting worse. So please don't take this warning awareness lightly, loves. This is serious. Underneath, I do teach how to do this. I would recommend coming back after you have taken the course and did the removals on yourself and your property and other cleansing methods before jumping into this, and make sure you are learning to connect with your true angelic guides. You will know when you will be guided, and you will clearly know when you are not. If you are still questioning, that can mean that you still have more work to do until you are there. But keep going, because you will get there. And real quick, just to let y'all know, is that if you still feel that you are absolutely positively needing to continue with the work without having to wait and everything, like what I'm suggesting with the big bold big bold letters and all of that, then definitely listen to your guides. They do know what's best. The reason why I'm suggesting that is just because I was trying to make it a little easier for you and maybe not as hardcore, because like I said, it can make you run and hide and try to run and hide, but it's just going to enhance and get worse. And like I said, even I had friends and a teacher and other things like that too that ended up, a lot of very bad things happened, and they, like I said, turned to Christianity and things like that. So I just kept at it. I was determined. I was just like, you're not going to continue to fool me. I know what you're doing, and this is meant on my path, and I'm going to continue to cleanse you off my path. And that's basically what I've been doing, and that's part of what this course is about, because I've had to fight tooth and nail to get where I'm at. And so I know that if I'm able to get to this point, I know you will be able to too. It just takes time. And I mean, this is years worth of me doing this too. I'm talking like probably 3 to 5 years, maybe a little less than that. For some people, it could be more. Some people, it could be less. It just depends. All right, so back to the lesson. I just wanted to clarify that, just to let y'all know, Like I said, if you strongly feel, because sometimes maybe we are meant to feed them that negative energy. What if that is a thing, And in me, I'm thinking, okay, well, if we're feeding them the energy, that's making things worse, which it does make things worse because you're feeding them and that gives them the energy and that gives them more reason to taunt you and this and the other. But again, what if sometimes it's meant to be, We don't know these exact answers, but like I said, I was trying to make it easier for y'all on your path. But just go with your intuition for sure, okay? All right, so how to do shadow work. So this is examples. And in this example, Sue is still living in a 3D type of world with her ego and does not know what shadow work is. This is for this example. To clarify myself and every human is this: unless we do the works. No one is perfect. We will always be working on this. I needed to be sure I was understood and not being egotistical or uncaring or unaware. I still remember when hearing things like this triggered my ego. And it did, y'all. I was like, how dare you say things like this? Or who do you think you are? And so, yes, I know. I've been there. All right, so starting with this example, with Sue being in 3D living with her ego and does not know what shadow work is. So Sue has encountered a situation that has triggered her jealousy shadow emotion. And Sue wants to retaliate by doing something she shouldn't be doing. Sue is unaware at the moment of what is going on and that the emotion came up as shadow work. This is our normal human reaction in a 3D ego world. She will retaliate by doing something. So what is happening? Is Sue having a shadow emotion come up to work on? Since she is unaware, she is going to respond accordingly to human emotions, with no awareness of shadow work. So she retaliates. But goes on about her day. And then a week later, she thinks karma or dharma has caught up to her and expects it as such to be going bad. Well, what happened is it's not karma or dharma, but is another lesson in shadow work in this scenario. By making another example happen again. Sue rinses and repeats. The point of this happening over and over is to get Sue's attention to learn shadow work. This is an example of Sue aware of shadow work and is working on ascension, living more spiritually enlightened. Now Sue has dug into the case because her hunch of karma dharma just seemed off. So she dug deeper and found shadow work. So now Sue is aware that when her jealous emotions are triggered and it comes up, it means there is something inside going on that needs energy healing. Or if she is not metaphysical, then maybe more practical. For her, it will then be doing like guidance counselor work. This example will be more of a metaphysical energy healing shadow work. She will identify the trigger, which is a jealous shadow emotion. She will dig into the cause by allowing her guides to help guide her to the answers. Some might use a pendulum for the answers. Sue will determine what the cause is. Her first trigger of this emotion was as a kid. She wanted this specific doll. Then the next day she goes to school, it's show and tell. And she sees this doll and is upset because she wanted that type of doll. So she is learning and processing jealous emotions. The energy of it is then stored either in the mind or somewhere in the body. More examples happen after that, and it just keeps piling up. And the lashing out just gets worse each time. Now Sue is older and recognizes it stemmed from childhood. And what example too? And so now she can work on releasing that energy and acknowledge each time it happens after. How she can feel the light in with compassion and understanding. That her little self didn't understand how to process or any awareness of shadow work. It was taught that to suppress that emotion and smile as if nothing is wrong. If not, ended up in results of spankings until she smiled to learn that lesson. Maybe not be this way nowadays, but for many of us it was. Some older generations' treatments were worse than this. I needed to mention this because some might say, oh, that's dramatic much. Nope, this was the reality for many. So now on, since she discovered shadow work and has been working on it, she is able to handle each new encounter just a little easier than the previous one. Because the more felt and seen with compassion and understanding in the situation versus before, it was acting out on emotions. So viewing and handling shadow work with compassion and understanding is part of the key to heal the shadow work. She was reminded she was a kid and what she went through with that example. Now she can look back and say, wow, that was some harsh discipline. Discipline. Sorry. If looked at with compassion and would have been taught, instead of with no patience, it would have been more explained why she couldn't get that doll. What positive reinforcement that could have been to help explain it further, so no shock from the trauma of being forced to emotions she is not able to properly understand or comprehend and not able to process at that young of an age. Keep in mind, on the flip side though, there are still important lessons that were taught. As harsh as it was, the value lesson in that is that it helps to teach to be stronger. But when older, would have to break that down in a more positive light than what was taught. But it still helps with learning to be stronger. How to do the dark night of the soul work. This is not an easy one to explain because everyone goes through theirs for their way. So it is not like it has, or like the shadow work. This is a lingering, in most cases, lost soul feeling, etc. That it's not like, okay, identify here and are the steps and okay, let's just work on it now. It's mostly to identify and go along with the ride and work with your guides. During this time, it is hard to find comfort. Some people like to be distracted by watching shows or movies or get creative, which of course is not in an exciting way either, but doing something they love even while feeling empty inside, because sometimes distraction is needed for the sanity. I do not want to go through this ever again, but it can happen anytime. It's great that it is a deep soul enhancement, but while having a human experience and this is going on can literally drive somebody mad. There is no relief or comfort, but in due time the light does come back, and so does ease. Here are some picture quotes of shadow work or the dark night of the soul. This first picture starts off with soul loss or shadow work. Many cultures throughout the beginning of time all over the world believe in the idea that you can lose your soul. When you go through extreme trauma, your spirit will leave the body to protect itself, leaving you to run on autopilot and feeling very detached as well as lost without hope. This can also lead to depression, feeling fatigued, and easily subdued by the ego. Another term for this is shadow work. This is the act of searching for the light in the darkness, making sense of those old wounds, your triggers, behavior, and transforming into a balanced and spiritually evolved being that is able to harness all their inner power. This is when your soul comes back home. The second picture. The dark night of the soul is not merely having a bad day or even week. The dark night is a long, pervasive, and very dark experience. If you're experiencing the dark night of the soul, you will constantly carry around within you a sense of being lost. Your heart will always, in some shape or form, be in mourning, and this is because you long deep down to feel the presence of your soul again. The third picture. What is dark night of the soul? The dark night of the soul is a long, depressing, and very dark experience that can continue for days, months, or even years. If you're experiencing the dark night of the soul, you will always feel a sense of being lost. Your heart will be in constant anxiety, as if your world, with its known habits and conditioning, is coming to an end. This is because after a spiritual awakening, your conditioned mind pattern is dying. While dying, your mind is making you feel miserable by re-identifying yourself with its old dysfunctional patterns. The soul is about to shine like a sun, and deep down, you have started to feel its presence. The fourth picture. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the dark conscious. Carl Jung. The last picture. The way I like to describe shadow work is like this. When we're first doing spiritual practice, we're moving out of dark spaces into the light of consciousness. And then our job is to take the light of consciousness back into the shadows and shine it there so that they can become the light of consciousness as well. And that's by Teal Swan. And if I'm correct, she's kind of been one of the beginning people that has started talking about shadow work. I don't know. I think she does talk about Dark Night of the Soul a little bit too, but I'm pretty confident the shadow work was her thing. And that concludes this lesson. And I will see you on the next one. Thank you for watching. Much love.